Awakening the source of love from chanting from the heart. I vow respectfully to Avalokiteshvara, to your great vow always to be there for all beings, to your capacity to look at the world with compassionate eyes, to listen deeply in order to understand and relieve suffering, and with your holy willow branch to sprinkle the nectar of immortality, cleansing my mind of all impurities. I vow to take refuge in you with all my heart. Respectfully, I offer you my vow in thousands of words.
Namo Avalokiteshvaraya. I vow to look deeply into the five skandhas. I vow to see the true nature of emptiness. I vow soon to reach the shore of awakening. I vow to overcome all obstacles. I vow to take the boat of perfect understanding.
Namo Avalokiteshvaraya. I vow to be present in all three bodies. I vow to realize the fruit of liberation. I vow to cultivate great compassion. I vow to penetrate deeply the Tathagata store. I vow to purify my mind.
Namo Avalokiteshvara. Please help me out of the abyss of craving. Please help me dissolve the worries of my mind. Please give me skillful means. Please help me build a sangha. Please help me transform my anger and hatred. Please help me uproot my ignorance. Please help me hold the high torch of right faith. Please give me the clear eyes of understanding.
Namo Avalokiteshvaraya. Please place my hand, the golden lotus. Please place in my hand the golden lotus. Please allow me to see the Dharma body I vow to build brotherhood and sisterhood. I vow to show gratitude to my spiritual lineage. I vow to practice loving speech. I vow to look with loving eyes.
Namo Valokiteshvaraya. I vow to practice deep listening. I vow to live mindfully and with clarity. I vow to realize meditative concentration. I vow to advance night and day on the heroic path. I vow to abide peacefully on the ground of reality. I vow to cultivate the 5 kinds of eyes and the 6 miraculous powers.
Namo Valokiteshvaraya. Please come with me to the war zones to stop the killing and bombing. Please walk with me to the places of sickness and suffering, bringing compassionate nectar and medicine. Please walk with me to the realms of hungry ghosts, bringing the Dharma food of understanding and love. Please walk with me to the realm of hell in order to cool the heat of afflictions. Please walk with me to places of conflict in order to remove hatred and anger and help the source of love to flow again. Homage to the Bodhisattva of great compassion. Homage to the Bodhisattva of great compassion. Homage to the Bodhisattva of great compassion.
And now we'll sit in silent meditation, holding those many vows of Avalokiteshvara. Mitchell, bowing out. Mitchell bowing in. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thanks to all the readers and the attentive listening to that lovely chant. And it's my pleasure to turn it over to Rehena to tell us about her recent trip to the West Bank and about the Garden of Love and Hope. Mitchell, bowing out.
Dear Thai, dear Sister Chankong, dear friends, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm really delighted to also see my beloved Sheila and Baruch online. So big hugs to you. So thank you for your solidarity here today as well. Yeah, thank you for listening. I had all the intentions of the visit to the Garden of Hope was actually recorded, the whole mindfulness session that was held from beginning to end. And I had a vision of actually taking snippets of it and trying to show you, because it's being recorded and I haven't got permission from the person who did the recording. I think it's probably not a good idea. Until I get that permission. But I think in our practice, sharing from the heart is the way we do it rather than videos and pictures. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to do a short synopsis of the trip, the intention, and where and what I did, and the projects that we, the Plum Village Sangha, have supported. And then I want to actually hand over a little bit to Sheila and Baruch to talk a little bit about what happened after I left with the peace summit that happened. And I think it will be really good for you to ask questions driven by our practice, because that might give you the information and insights you feel is important that I may not cover. So I think I'll start at the beginning. As many of you know, or many of you may not know, I'm actually South African who grew up during the apartheid regime and was called a terrorist there. In June, Nelson Mandela Day in 2020, part of the event that we had organized with the sacred, with Tanisara, various Buddhist groups came together and we hosted a session called Looking Deeply, Palestine and Israel. And we had two activists who you've heard, Isa and Aviv, talk about their experience. And on that event, Isa felt called to share his vision for the Garden of Hope, what it was that he was intending to do. And that was the first time he shared that vision in public. And a few of us on the call, including many who listened to it, felt called to support the transitioning of that dream and vision into something real. And that project has taken 4 years, for 4.5 years, 5 years to come to some level of fruition, with many, many difficulties, given both funding, getting money into the West Bank to fund it, as well as the pace and various things that we know has transpired. The reality of it is that that center has largely been, the ISA Center has largely been driven and came to fruition through us Buddhist practitioners, through the funding, the generosity, and the energy, both from outside of the West Bank and from those international, but also from a lot of support from our sanghas in Israel and Palestine. And so I made a commitment, personal commitment, that I would go when the center, to ISA, that I would go when the center was ready to be opened. And that was a commitment I felt I had to honor, no matter what was happening in the West Bank. That was something that I felt very strongly that I had to honor. I also wanted to go to the West. So that was the one project. And the second project was one that we've also been supportive of, which is the one that is being the yoga and mindfulness center that's being developed in Bethlehem, which I also visited and had a sense to see the difference and the scale. One of the two other drivers was actually to go to the West Bank in the time that we had, was because so many people tell me, what is the difference between South Africa and the South African experience and the Palestinian experience? And I can't say because I haven't been there and I haven't experienced it. So that was the other driver for me. And the fourth one was really to see how, beyond funding centers, how we can support the peace activists in our tradition who are working to create peace, irrespective of whether they Israeli, Jewish, or Palestinian, Muslim, Christian. And for me, it felt really important to know what is needed on the ground, so to speak. So I went to the West Bank. I spent most of my trip, 2.5 weeks, in the West Bank. And I went to over Easter. So over Easter, and that was also Passover period for those that celebrating the Jewish religious period. And I traveled from East Jerusalem to Bethlehem. I was in Nablus. I was in Harris, which is where Easter's Mindfulness Center is. And I went to areas which was told to be not so safe to go to. And that was Nablus, Hebron, and I went to the Jordan Valley as well. And in that time, I spent time with various groups of people. Peace activists like Sheila and Baruch and younger peace activists. I met with many, many Palestinian people, shepherds who are experiencing a lot of violence. I saw some of that violence myself in the villages that I walked past. And so I think I'm going to share a little bit about the difference as well now between the two centers, and then I'll see what feels called to share as well. So a little bit about the two centers. The one in Harris, which is Asuf, the Garden of Hope, is a really large center. So it's going to have, it's 2 stories. It has 2 ensuite. It has a large room. It has a kitchen, it has offices, and it has an upstairs, which could be used for multi-purpose rooms. And the center is intended, and it is actually in an area that is declared Territory C. To get to Isa's village, the closest settlement around him is Ariel. And to get to him from Jerusalem, it's about just slightly more than an hour. And when we travel there, we travel for the Day of Mindfulness. And I actually stayed the weekend with Isa and his family in Harris. We traveled a lot of the entrance to the village was closed because of checkpoints. So it took us a lot longer to get there. But that center is built on very fragile ground. And what do I mean by that? It's built on an area or territory that's classified as Territory C. And maybe that signifies the impermanence of any structure or group of people. Territory C means that it could be demolished in the near future at any time. And I think it takes great courage to build a center knowing that there is no permanence to the reality of what the center was. And so we did have an opening. The center's not completely finished. This kitchen still needs to be installed and so forth. but it was complete enough to host a day of mindfulness. And it's complete enough for people to stay there as it is, because it has water and electricity and so forth. And on the day of mindfulness, which was very kindly organized by Dorit, there were about, and for me, what struck me was as you enter the village, there is a sign that says, danger, for it's a danger for anyone who's Jewish to enter this village. And what was beautiful was actually on the day of mindfulness, there were about 50 people, people who could be classified as Israeli, Jewish, of Jewish origin, that were at this day of mindfulness. And it was really beautiful to hear, and it was Dorit organized it, and it was hosted, and Aviv and I were asked to sit on a panel where many people are invited to ask us questions. And Aviv shared, and so did Isa, shared what the vision of the center is. And one of the things that struck me about what Isa said wasn't something, yes, he did say that it was all the practical things that the center could offer in terms of trauma, in terms of mindfulness, in terms of growing our practice, in growing the peace. But what he asked everyone to do was to remind us, and I really distinctly hear in a different echo Ty's words, where he said that he asks us each to be a seed, for each of us to use our networks, for each of us to know that we are the seed to grow peace in so many different ways for ourselves, for the communities we sit in, but also for the world around us. And that vision of what really stood out for me was from all the activists that were present there was really this compassion for the other, the compassion and understanding that actually violence, no matter what violence is meted out, that violence was not the way. And he shared something which really was very poignant. He said, just as we are under occupation, so are all the IDF soldiers who sit in those checkpoints, who are sleeping in that checkpoint, fearing for their life. It's not a comfortable bed. They are staying there. So how is it that we too, as sitting under the occupation, can make their life a little easier? And so that, for me, there was just one thing he said that, for me really encapsulated the sense of wanting things to change, but change in a fundamentally different way. And so that was Isa Center. It was interesting for me to notice that they weren't, other than Isa's family and the officials in the community, there wasn't really any other Palestinians there. And part of it was on a Friday and it was during prayer time. So that was, it was really, really beautiful to hear and to have so many people there to support Isa, to hear how it might unfold, and who saw it not just as supporting Isa, but also benefiting from what that center would be and what that center would offer, growing it beyond mindfulness to also how they can use it to host more dialogue with the settler settlement that's just across the road. So that's a little bit about that center. And I went to Bethlehem to look at the other center, which again is also almost complete, but that's slightly smaller. It's a yoga, trauma, mindfulness center that's in a middle class sort of area in Bethlehem, and aims to do a lot of workshops and different sort of activities. What struck me in all the areas that I went through was the sense of just looking at it, even underlying, while I didn't see people actively showing despair, there was still such a sense of so much of the West Bank is, you can feel the sense of oppression. And yet I can see over and over again the peace activists, but both in the West Bank and outside of the West Bank, trying to cultivate so much hope, and hope not from the sense of wishful thinking, but active courage kind of hope to actually make a difference in small little ways, which could turn into something much larger. I think that takes a particular, and for me, it was quite traumatic because I experienced all of that for myself in South Africa. And so I felt, for many ways, it felt familiar territory because I knew how to navigate some of these, what I experienced with the checkpoints, with guns being visible, um, with people having grenades strapped around their waist. It was almost familiar, and I knew how to respond to it. So it was a lot of activation from that perspective for me. But what I saw from all sides for those working in peace was absolute courage. Courage because the violence that's being meted out to the Palestinian people is also being meted out now to peace activists. To peace activists like Baruch and Sheila, and I know there are younger activists who've been really assaulted quite badly in terms of their peaceful protests. I was struck by the difference in the different areas that I went to and the level of violence that seems to have increased in all those areas. And fundamentally, I think the only thing that held me was recognizing that all this violence was not religious. It was access to land and resources that underlie all of it, which comes back to what we know our practice on Buddhism shows us. It's greed, greed and power, you clinging on to power and greed and all of those elements that we know drive behaviors. What I also saw was the difference between Palestinians, those who are recent entrants into Israel and those who've lived there for many years and potentially generations. There's a different ethos in the behavior towards one another that I observed with a lot more. When I went to some of the villages on the way to Harris, I saw how the olive trees, and for me, this is the most powerful image I saw was, which we probably all saw in some form or the other, of a Palestinian woman holding on to a 500-year-old olive tree, which was being mowed, which was being destroyed. And it reminded me of my own history, where in India in 1860s, women actually married trees to protect them from being mowed down to make way for railways. And in this case, it was making way for settlements. And I also saw the courage of all the peace activists that stood in solidarity when the villages are being destroyed. And I saw some myself outside of East Jerusalem, an area called Silwan. The houses were being demolished to make way for settler housing. But a lot of peace activists come and stand in solidarity to try and prevent that from happening. And so there is a lot of activism that we don't see, that we don't hear about, a lot of solidarity that we don't see and we don't hear about, that is actually happening on the ground. For me, when I went to Nablus and Hebron in the Jordanian Valley, I saw how land is being stripped away from people who lived so closely in harmony with the land to become overfarmed, different ways of interacting with that earth, commercialized, maybe slightly exploitative. And it's just that is not a new story. That's an old story that we're seeing happening in another part of the world, and it's part of our immediate attention. And I also saw a lot of hospitality from people who had nothing to give in terms of how I was treated. I have to say, I felt much safer traveling, and maybe this is my own history. I felt safer traveling through the East Bank than I did trying to go through although I didn't travel as much through is the Israel areas, but mainly West Jerusalem. I think I'm really grateful that I actually left en route. I left by staying at the Oasis of Peace. It's the village midway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And it is jointly managed and run with Palestinians and Israeli, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim living together in harmony, or trying to live together in harmony. And this was a great way to spend some time to experience what the possibility of the future might look like. And I'm really grateful that I spent time with Sheila Sheila and Baruch, who introduced me to young activists. I spent time with Dorit, and I got different stories and different narratives, or different stories. But ultimately, everyone that I met working for peace had the same goal, to bring a different energy so that we could live together peacefully and with justice. So that basically, I think, is what I wanted to share. I think there's still a lot of initiatives that have come out of that where we've been requested to help on, but I'm not. I mean, and they revolve really around more fundraising to complete especially expand and program and set into place what those might be for ESA in the Garden of Hope. There were other support that was needed in terms of how can we support to offer a lot of one of the camps that I went to, Beit Jalla, which is outside of Nablus, because people are being moved out of their lands. A lot of the refugee areas become huge high-rise buildings, and you could barely fit in between. And a lot of the time, the children there don't have any places to play, or the violence becomes displaced to women and children. So there was some call for us, how can we help with, offering some kind of psychological support and services. And 2 hours after I left Nablus, the 3 children that I met were kidnapped and tied around a tree by settlers and left in the sun for 3 hours. And when they found, they had to be hospitalized. So a lot of that trauma of 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 healing. But I also think, there's so many on the others. I don't know what other word to use. I don't want to say the other side. I think the work of Baruch, Sheila, Dorit, and so many other practitioners, Buddhist practitioners, who are trying also to heal and support on what could be perceived as the other side is so inspiring, because it feels so overwhelmingly hopeless at sometimes. But there's still that little bit that we just carry on persevering. And as I shared, that it might be that one drop, it takes only a drop of water to turn a cup from being full to overflowing. And maybe this little initiative, whatever we do, whatever people on the ground are doing, might be that one drop that turns the energy from where it is to something different. And I think that's what I saw, this courage to keep going on because it is making and it will and it can make a difference. And then my entry into Israel was very seamless, but my entry out of Israel was far more difficult. I prepared very well to be interrogated on my entry in. What I didn't prepare so well was to be interrogated on my way out. And who knew that the euphemism of going to the that take your luggage to the oversized baggage counter meant that it was a full search and interrogation. But now I know if someone tells you take your luggage to the oversized baggage counter, it means that everything is going to be searched. But that was on my exit, and so that was quite funny. I don't think I have anything else to share, but what I would like to say, and I'd like to hand over to Sheila and Baruch to complete, and I wish I had stayed longer. And I will be going back next year in April, because that's a commitment I also made. But one of the things I want to say and follow up on is that I wish I had stayed because after I left in May, there was this peace summit that was held. And I feel it's really important to include it as part of my trip. So I'd really like to hand over to Sheila and Baruch to share a little bit about that peace summit because I know that they played a key role in it. Rehena, and then I'm happy to take, I'm sure we all are, I'm happy to take questions from you in terms of anything you'd like to learn further. Rehena, bowing out. Over to you, Sheila and Baruch, to share about the Peace Summit.
Okay. Baruch bowing in. It's wonderful, you know, what I heard till now. I mean, I heard from you also, but and the other things, actually, it's just wonderful to experience and the changes that are, some of you were here. So, first of all, with Issa, you know, when I realized the time that passed, these years, you know, actually it must be 20 years, the process. I mean, when Issa had the kids born and all the stages, I just realized how kind of time stopped here in this area, in the, like, as if the watch stopped working. Okay, a lot of things happened. Also with Issa, you know, first of all, the generosity of Sister Chang Kong, that they invited, and Issa was there twice with the whole family. And he, for those who don't know, he was paralyzed, you know, he's paralyzed since he was shot. And what a coincidence, actually, it was the first day that he was accepted to the PLO as a teacher of gymnastics, and he came back, and that day he was shot. And to be like this, and to grow, and to do what he did physically, and to see his kids growing up, and the time that his wife passed away from cancer in Hadassah Hospital, and to continue all this. And I just, you know, I mean, I realized time kind of now when you were talking, I could listen. It's like maybe 15 years ago, that already something that he already had a determination and used to go there. And actually at some, and actually Sheila and Dorit together were facilitating a Sangha. That's at the beginning. And what was beautiful that he took look into it, that foreign students, mostly from Europe, they would be driven and participate in the Sangha. So it's like it, it created a lot of contact also with young people and the Palestinians and learning the issues from all sides, because these youngsters continue to be activists in their country, in Europe. And I'm mentioning this because we are in these times that I feel that as sad as things are now, we are in a transmission place, and something is going to happen not too far from now. I'm jumping from subject to subject, but it's worth listening to an interview done by the New York Times. Actually, it's by Thomas Friedman, and he was interviewed by a young Israeli Palestinian actually, and an interview with a lot of insight. I recommend to listen to Thomas Friedman, because he feels like us, and I sense some spirituality in him also, that he feels like us, and people are grasping what we are bringing to them, actually, all of us as the students of Thai, and it has an impact. So that's about with Issa, and then Issa sometime succeeded to come to the demonstration in Tel Aviv and speak with people, and once in the Cinematheque event and so on. And all these small things contribute to change of consciousness. So, and to just point to one thing of absurdity, in the middle of the village of Issa, there is a house, a little villa kind of, a man built it with his own hands. He was working for years in 2 or 3 jobs in the factories around there. And then they want to demolish it. Why? Because a few meters of his garden are not kind of in area C, not are not, so it needs permission. So to demolish the whole, so the whole thing is, the whole concept is, since actually the settlers and their extreme right wing are in that, it's to make life difficult. And in the last month, it goes to such an extreme that it's really unbearable. A lot of our friends are really trying to protect their in the field. But how can you protect everyone when like these children that are tied? So anyway, it's like an odd situation, but so much compassion also comes out of this, of people going there and having direct contact with the Palestinians. And it's true, I do description also. I really sometimes I feel safer there than some places in this side. There is something very, I don't know, there is something very different, very human, because like kind of people stay the way they once, walking in the field and so on. Anyway, so to get to the point, you want to talk about the ideas now? So I will mention a few things about the time has arrived. And before this, I just want to close off with saying that a lot of young people, and less young, in the last 25, 30 years, that they they are in contact with our practice and also with non-violent communication. I saw Roberta before she was here. It's something that really planting seeds, that something is happening there. And in the last years, really, some people also went through trainings in all kind of forms that we had, whether and retreats, of course, the teachers coming here from village, and also from the States, like I see here Lynn and Michelle and so on. It all have an impact, and it's like creates an interconnectedness, all this. So we are really part of of the global change that is on its way. So so back to the time has arrived. The time has arrived. Actually, Sheila and I were in the first meeting that happened in Tel Aviv. I think it's less than a year ago. About a year ago. We were maybe 40 people, the leadership of the peace movement actually. We didn't come as Thai, but among the 40 people were already a few people that at the time were unknown, like Mao Zedong and so on, the new leadership, and someone called Maya Savir that we mentioned that she might come in the future here. She spent time in South Africa, and she's an expert on reconciliation and wrote a book about it. So anyway, so when we were sitting in Tel Aviv, we kind of started the vision, and the idea was that it won't be only the you know there is the peace movement, and there are a few tens of organizations, and if we could bring them together and have a convention and to bring out the voice of peace. Now, this is not a simple mission because actually, because of collecting money and so on, there's kind of a competition also naturally between the different organizations. Everyone has to take care of himself. And I'm saying in terms that if you are a chairperson of a director of an organization, you feel some obligation. So we set out to kind of try to work around this and bring in a different spirit and see what will happen. So it actually, the date that was set for a big event like this was a couple of weeks ago, a month ago, less than a month actually. Yeah. And so it was a very ambitious plan to take if those who remember in Jerusalem, in the entrance, there is a building called the Binyanei Ha'oma, the building of the nation, and to do like 2 days in Jerusalem, once enough budget, so it's like collecting, like to have other events the first day, like in the Hebrew Union College and some of the offices of the NGOs and all kind of things like that. So the thing is that we had so many things. It was a success, but so much effort went into this. We had the peace walk, by the way. Then they say that the organizers said, some of them were, including Maoz, in the peace walks before, and they started to like the idea of silent peace walk and bringing the spirit. So they wanted, anyway. So it was a lot of energy in a short time, and there were so many things that actually this building itself was packed with 8,000 peace activists, which is quite a number, actually, in terms of Israel. And so many things in every corner, you see discussions and in the big, so some of the things were talks, like a very few politicians for a very limited minute. And the interesting thing is that out of this, nothing almost went into the Israeli media. Only Channel 11, a few days after, a few minutes. So this, I'm mentioning this to show you to what extent already the government of Netanyahu controls the media and the challenges that we are facing ahead of us. On the other hand, there are far many more people that they are getting conscientious and observe that this is happening. So what's happening here, it's amazing actually. And it really all happens for these small meetings, for so many initiatives that some of the organizations did. And it's really major, this transformation. And actually, yeah. So, actually, this is the time has arrived, and then now the frustration started, and it's the president of France offered to do a conference in Paris as soon as possible. So it brought in a spirit. What? So what's happening with this is that we were told that anyone who wants, I mean, anyone, any activist, the circle grew to maybe 700 or 800 heads of organizations, so on and so on, that we were invited to put in ourselves. That we, and anyway, I want to share this with you because I share with you the next stage, what's needed. So we thought that it's not an important stage. The important stage is the next stage. And I think we were maybe the only ones that were entered to do it, and we didn't fill the form even. We didn't want to. And they say that everything is sponsored, the flight, the staying there, and so on. So anyway, so maybe 300 wrote, and not all of them were accepted. And so a lot of our friends, not from the practice, from the peace organizations and so on, that we are collaborating. And this Wednesday, we are going to have the follow-up of this event and what's going to be next. So a few tens of us are going to meet in this Wednesday in the youth hostel of Maoz Yinon in Tel Aviv. That's where we start the fall. So that's going to happen, and see what in which direction is going to go. Originally, and that's why when originally I thought that maybe if it's serious, that it will be important to bring in many of our practitioners to the event in France, and I thought even if they just meditate there, it will change the atmosphere. Absolutely. I'm convinced about it. But I think it's not going to be so important for this event. And I think it's going to be a follow-up in the United States. And for that, I think we need to be involved in different ways. To be actually probably be in, I'm drawing this in now, in one sentence, to be in a way that it will speak about also about the ecology, and will bring the spirit and the practice to there. And so the political sides will be affected, because as it is, I don't expect much out of this. That's it. I think so. The last thing you mentioned, the young activists, they are lovely. They are simply adorable. I mean, we had a big demonstration in Haifa this weekend. So this Shabbat. So some of these young activists that people don't really know them, they keep themselves in the shade. But some of them, they practically live in the villages. They do everything with them. They learned Arabic. They learned Arabic. They are really, no, it's very important for the future, because until now there was no consciousness of learning the Arabic. And so what's happening, and we thought that Haifa is an important place, and the Israeli Palestinians don't dare to come out to the streets. So for quite some time, we planned this demonstration this Friday in Haifa. And some of these youngsters were sleeping in Haifa for the last days already. And some still from the villages collected, and anyway, they did an incredible job. And the police tried to do everything to stop this demonstration before time, even in the last minute. And the NGO that helped us also with our permits for the peace walk also did a good job. And people are a bit afraid, I must say, in these situations. Not everyone dares to come out. And so the demonstration in Haifa was a real success, a nice walk, and good spirit, and very empowering for the Israeli Palestinians, and giving hope. So I think I say too much. Thank you. Bowing out.
I'm sure some of you might have some questions. So I'm sure we can try and answer them, or I can, and if not, maybe someone else can. Is that you, Roberta?
Sorry, Rehena.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think Roberta had a hand up.
Well, I have a question for Baruch and Sheila, but Sheila wanted to say something.
Okay, go ahead, Sheila.
What's the question, Roberto? It may.
Okay, thank you. I'm wondering if you could share well, first, love you. You are just okay, I'll start to cry. Um, could you just speak a little bit about what are mm, the gaps you're finding between the Israeli and Palestinian peacemakers? And my question's coming directly from my own. Just this morning, I was in a whole text thread with someone you know, an Israeli dedicated to Palestinian liberation, seeing our liberation as intertwined. I trust that. And yet, um, there's a way in which I know there's just some gap between where I'm at and where my Palestinian colleagues are at, and this particular Jewish Israeli activist. So I would just love to hear Sangha wisdom on, what are the disconnects? What are the places of disconnection, and any ideas you have for breaching that? Easy question.
Well, if we were able to answer that, there probably would be no gap. So, but it's not. I don't know whether I will answer it directly, but I'll just say some things of what's happening, and then maybe I'll be able to get to it. Maybe I'll be able to understand it, because I'm not looking at the gaps as much as where we can meet in the places where we can meet, and other places, not the gaps lately, because the gaps are really huge. And as Fab Ann in 2003, when he was here with Mitchell and Lynn Fine and some other faces that on the screen, that he said, after spending some time with us, he said the Israelis are sharing about their personal suffering, and the Palestinians about their national suffering, and each side, and we're on parallel lines, and each side has to work on its own. So I think what's happening over the last 20 years is that we're really beginning now, only in the last while do I see that we're really beginning to work on our own issues and not looking at the other for blame all the time. It's the first time that I begin to see this in the last years. Before I start to say any more, I just wanted, before I forget it, I want to thank gorgeous Rehena for being here, and your bringing your generous spirit and your wisdom, and I want to thank her very much altogether for and Rehena and Mitchell and Lynn and all of the people, and Plum Village. I want to mention Plum Village here, the Plum Village community. I think their presence is very, very important, and it's helping us to bridge the gap between the Palestinians and the Israelis here. The teachings and the backing of Plum Village. And I loved, Rehena, I loved when you mentioned about Isa and the seed. This is what I see Isa as somehow or another. And I think that's what I spoke to him about years ago at meetings in his place. But now when you were talking, I feel somehow or another that these are seed. This is a seed that's being pollinated. And there's a lot of seeds flying all over the place here at the moment. And it's really, this is where I feel. I mean, I know I have my periods, my down periods, but when I'm looking at things, and you give me an opportunity to look at things in perspective somehow or another, you were talking, helped me to see what has been happening over the last 20 years, Baruch mentioned it, our going to ISIS. And when we were there, we met people, we communicated, we made friendships that didn't seem so important, maybe one-on-one at the time. But all of these connections that we made then are coming to fruition now. It seems that they were dormant for a while, and especially after the 7th of October. And now many of the connections that we are remaking back with the Palestinians are coming from connections that we made many, many years ago. And somewhere or another, there's a kind of a trust has been built. And it's amazing. It's happening in kind of different spheres. Like, and I know what it's like getting to, we all know what it's like getting to ISAs, you know, when it's being closed down, leaving the cars away farther from the village and crawling under the fences and not coming in the main gates and then not able to get out. And it somehow or another, all of these difficulties that the authorities put in our way bonded us together in a way that wouldn't have happened if everything had been easy. So I'm just mentioning this because it's very important, all of these seeds that are being planted and by Plum Village in many, many ways as well. And the trips that Palestinians and Israelis have made to Plum Village over the years that didn't look like at the time as if it was something that was groundbreaking, even although it was, but we didn't see the results. But it has planted seeds that are flourishing today. And it is giving us a kind of it's closing gaps, Roberto. People that we meet with, Palestinians who have been to Plum Village or who have been to the Sangha meetings at ISAs, these are the people that we're starting to work with today. And from there, we're able to branch out to people who are not and don't know the practice and who are just beginning to see that there must be another way. For example, there was a women's group that I was at about 2 months ago. I think it's the first group that Palestinian women have actually initiated and have invited Israelis to for quite some time. And it was just, it was also people that we met at ISAs over the years and that we had lost contact with. And these are very, very strong ties. And these contacts that we're having now on a one-to-one basis have been built throughout the years. It's not new people. Also ISA. There's the Sound of Peace Radio has started podcasts. There was the first podcast. It's only in Hebrew and Arabic, so we haven't sent it out. But it was with Isa and with Ma'ozi Noon. And the interviewer was Dr. Ziad Darwish from Ramallah, whom we met at meetings with Abbas 15 or 20 years ago. And it's like it's people who had peace in their hearts then and who either lost hope or had too many obstacles put in their way. It's as if, you know, it's like it's after a forest fire, as if seeds are springing up all over the place. You know, we have been really devastated here, Palestine and Israel. Burned, it's literally burned to the ground in some ways. And I think out of that there are new seedlings. I'm going to keep that seed in my heart. I think it's very, very important idea, because sometimes the winter seems like a very long time. It doesn't seem that it'll ever sprout again, but it is sprouting. And to come back to Higia has man, now is the time, or the time has arrived, or enough is enough. You can translate it in different ways from the Hebrew. People say Higia has man when they mean enough is enough. And so it is a kind of a play on words here. it started, as I said, a year ago, and there was a charter prepared by about 80 people, about 40 Palestinians and 40 Israelis. And people worked on it. It's sitting in Geneva for a long, long time. And then it was given out to many of the peace activists to improve on it, prepare it, to insert Pi's language here and there. And then we had this idea that we would be going forward with this charter and this idea, but life has a habit of getting in the way. And things have, I can't describe it exactly. I didn't write about the last Higia Hazman because I didn't know what to say. We put so much energy into it. And each individual offering was very interesting, but I cannot yet find from it the engine, the oil of the engine that's going to propel us forward in any particular direction. But sometimes you don't see these things at the time. You have to take a step back and see that seeds are being planted where places that we don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that in the last few weeks, since your visit here, we've had a few meetings in the West Bank territory, which we haven't had for many, many years. And we're learning ways to get around, to get out of Area C and get into the other areas through the goodwill of Palestinians who know where the checkpoints are and who are able to bring us through areas where their checkpoints aren't, so that we feel very safe. And there's solidarity growing up again between groups, but the situation is extremely difficult. The violence, the settler violence, is extreme. Police violence is growing. Verbal violence is accepted. Hate language. And last week, in our neighborhood next to us, about 20 minutes walk from us, there was a young Palestinian, Fouad Aliyan, who came to drink coffee at a regular coffee place where people from the East Jerusalem and Beit Safafa and these areas can come. And he came to drink a cup of coffee, and he went to the park, and he had a violent meeting with some young Jewish men. And he tried to get away, and they ran him down with the car and killed him, and his cousin is in hospital. And the police came and left and didn't do anything. So this is a kind of a microcosm of the whole situation altogether. I mean, you have a police presence which causes more damage than it helps, and can. Anyway, this is one. The following morning, there were over 100 people there standing at the place where he was killed. Some people from the Sanghas and some people from other organizations, well over 40, and many, many people from his village who came as well. So we were about 50 Palestinians and 50 Israelis, and we had a vigil there, and it was like a Sangha. It was, we stood in the kind of solidarity, and it was a very, very, very strong feeling. And police stayed away altogether. They didn't come close. We saw them, but they didn't interfere in any way. So also, I see that Israelis are becoming more aware. I mean, I know it has taken a long time of the pain of the Palestinians and the killing in Gaza. For the past 3 weeks or so, every week there are, every day actually, there are hundreds and thousands of Israelis holding posters of children that have been killed in Gaza in the major cities and also near the border with Gaza. And this is something that was not seen at all until very lately. So I think we were talking about gaps, Roberta. I don't have an answer really. Yeah. So I'm very, very grateful to all of you for being here. And I know that Isa's trip to Plum Village was also helped so much by the Washington Sangha. I mean, the Sanghas, the worldwide Sanghas are really doing so much, giving so much support. And and when we wanted to have the peace walk here, the first people I approached was Mitchell and Rehena and all of those that I knew that would give us wise wisdom and support. And we can do things here because we know we're not alone. And this is very, very important. Thank you. I spoke too much also. You shouldn't give us this opportunity.
And still, I want to say 5 sentences about what you asked about what can be done. I think that our secret power is understanding interbeing deeply. So if we can, wherever we are, just at the same time to understand 2 points of views, which we understand. What is the Jewish point of view? What is the American point of what? So for us, it's coming natural because of interbeing. So if we can see all this and see that it's not a conflict, it could be this point of view, at that point of view, at that point of view, and meanwhile we are progressing ahead.
This is Rhonda bowing in. Thank you all so much for the deep sharings. I'm so glad that I came today, and I'm seeing that Rehena has to leave soon, and I actually have to bow out, and I am feeling like I would love to hear more from Rehena as well around any Palestinian activist voices that she had an opportunity to share with while in the West Bank. And clearly, if there's not enough time at this time, maybe there'll be another time to come back. I really appreciate being here. I came to visit knowing Rehena was going to be here and was be bringing some news back from the West Bank, and also appreciate all the deep sharings that have and information that's been shared so far. Thank you. This is Rhonda bowing out.
Mitchell bowing in. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Baruch and Sheila and Rehena. Our usual closing time is 5 minutes ago at after an hour and a half. I don't want to shut us down immediately, but we do have to stop. And I think there's so much good energy in this conversation. I'll talk with Avi about how to continue it soon, because this seems to be a subject that many people care about, and there's a lot of energy and absolutely vital topic. So if you have closing comments or a question, please be concise, and we'll try and end in not too long. Mitchell bowing out.
So Rehena bowing in, if I can take 2 minutes, less than a minute, and answer Rhonda's question, and in the same way contribute to what Roberta asks. I think when we talk about Palestinian voices and Palestinian activists and any voices for peace or working in any type of activism. There is no one homogenous group. There is no one homogenous voice. The diversity of voices, whether it is vociferous and angry or whether it's peaceful and passive, range across both sides. And the changes come rather than contesting the voices that shout louder than you. I notice from my experience, both in South Africa and what I've observed, is where those voices that have commonality can touch. And that commonality might be on the little things, or it might be on the bigger things. And that is based on the intersectionality of that commonality, whether it is gender, religion, whether it is personal suffering, because just in our own practice, we all interpret our teachings in different ways and we apply it in different ways. So too do activists. And that is something that's important as to whether we spend energy bringing voices that we disagree with down, or we spend our energy growing things that can effect change. And that's where I think the different forms of activism takes place. And that's where there's diversity in the different voices, both on the Jewish Israeli side or Jewish Israeli side, as well as those on the Palestinian side. But to just touch on the Palestinian voices, I think there is a huge difference between the young Palestinian activists and the older Palestinian activists. I think there's a huge difference in how they see, even those that practice with us, how they see the practice. Because a lot of the time, even in our practice, they feel oppressed because of the space and the voices that they have. And I think there's also a difficulty, and I'm just capturing some of them very simply. There's a difficulty to engage in some of the events that are being hosted because of the difficulty it is in this day and time in Palestine to travel in the West Bank. I mean, over the period that I was there, a lot of Christians didn't get permission to be able to come to Jerusalem during the holy period of Easter, to the holy city. So that kind of getting permission to go places, there's a lot of control around that, which also inhibits how much Palestinians can move out of the areas that they're in. So there is a dependency on the voices that can come in and observe to take it out. And that in itself brings an imbalance of power, because the message that goes out is not necessarily the same way that you could have done it, or your contribution can't be the same way. But I think the young Palestinians are seeing there is a lot of anger. There is a lot of anger, but there is a lot of, more than I've seen in a long time, from both the young Palestinians and the older activists, a connection to the land, connection to every home that I went to had olive trees, had trees. There's just this connection to the earth that is being eroded. And I think even the young Palestinian activists have that connection. And if anything can be used to change, sometimes it's that connection to the land that where our practice can influence becomes really important. So that was really a short synopsis, my view, my perception. I'm happy to come again and share more. I mean, it was both hopeful and despairing, but I'm happy to share more. I mean, I met many, 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 many Palestinians whose practice in our tradition. It's also about how we can hold spaces for them. That's going to become important. Rehena, thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I couldn't show pictures, but the video of the whole event is probably going to be available at some point, and I'm sure we can share that with you just to look through, to hear what Isa shared as his wisdom, to hear what Aviv, who's been working tirelessly over many, many years, has shared, and very inspired by Thich Nhat Hanh's own story, where he's sharing, and then Dorit as well. I think it's really inspiring to hear. Thank you so much, Mitchell, for having me. I'll let you do the closing comments before Rhonda. I hope that answered your question, Rhonda, as well. but bowing out.
Mitchell bowing in. So does anybody have a short comment that they'd like to offer before we close in just a few minutes? I know um, it's been a pretty intense hour. And thank you again, Rehena, for providing the information and all the energy that's so alive in you and in Baruch and Sheila and in the peace activists in Palestine and in Israel. But anybody have a quick one or two short comments and then we'll close. Mitchell bowing out.
Leo, I'm buying it just for a second. It was really beautiful how Sheila said, about that the relationship, the seeds that were growing over time, and it's a answer to always asking what can we do. We're just one person, or we just run small groups, and we don't know who to. I mean, it's just to believe in what we believe in and just keep going. So that was really great. Thank you.
Phyllis bowing
Phyllis.
in quickly.
Yeah.
I just want to say that I'm always craving more information from the ground there in Israel and Palestine, and so I'm so grateful for this and wanting to hear more, and also whether the people who have been there can share in some way the resources to us about, how to contacts and how to organize or visit some of these places, because I've been more than ready to go there for a while, and would like to. So thank you. Phyllis bowing out.
Mitchell bowing in. There have been resources shared and will be more, and Avi has a lot of resources which he'll be seeing this whole video and we'll be sharing them. And as a way of ending, I would like to share a metta prayer that comes originally from Bhante Gunaratana, a Sri Lankan monk. May we be well, happy, and peaceful. May no difficulties come to us. May no problems come to us. May no harm come to us. May we always meet with success. And may we also have the patience, courage, understanding, and determination to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties, problems, and failures in life. Many blessings. Come back in 2 weeks.